Welcome to the Wealthy's Circle podcast, where we take a deeper dive into this year's finalists and winners from our wealthmanagement.com 2020 industry awards. These interviews cover the challenges, innovations, and trends in the wealth management industry and the individuals working to help advisors better help their clients.
Okay, thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm David Armstrong. I'm the editor of wealthmanagement.com, and these are the Wealthy's podcasts. This is the podcast where we speak to finalists and winners of our wealthmanagement.com industry awards. And today I'm thrilled to be talking to Eric Clarke, the CEO of Orion Advisors Solutions. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to be here with you and be part of the Wealthy's podcast series.
Well, you guys have been recognized just about every year since these awards began. So we appreciate your participation in the program. It's fantastic. As you know, we're trying to highlight initiatives that help financial advisors build better practices and better serve their end clients. And I know that's what you guys are all about at Orion. This year, there were about 8 finalists, I think, categories that you were finalists in, kind of across the spectrum: financial planning, direct indexing, some of the portfolio solution stuff, even some biotech investments that portfolios that you guys put together. A lot of activity kind of going on there. Why don't you, first of all, though, step back a little bit and tell me where are you calling in from today, and you know what's life look like in your part of the world right now?
Yeah, so David, I'm joining you from our office here in Omaha, Nebraska. It's the headquarters of our Orion Advisor business. We have just over 1,000 members of our team. Although we're headquartered here in Omaha, we also have offices in Seattle, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and New York. And as I join you today, you know, I'm in a 75,000 square foot facility here, and I'm probably, you know, one of maybe about a half a dozen of us that are in the office today. You know, we're right in the midst of this pandemic, and we are still in a very much a work from home environment, as I'm sure most of our advisors are as well. I know from doing Zoom meetings all day long with the advisors that we have the good fortune to do business with, that many of them are, you know, working from home. From time to time, I see some of the advisors on the Zoom are also in the office. You know, I've got teenage kids, David, and so for me, it's just easier to be here in the office. So that's where I'm at today, and you know we're really excited about the way that our team has transitioned to this work from home environment. We're excited about the support levels that we've been able to provide to our advisors during this pandemic, and quite honestly, thrilled to be part of a technology solution that our advisors are leveraging to enable their businesses to run successfully in a work from home environment. Thinking back about the business continuity plans that we've put together over the years, that the pandemic always seemed like such an unlikely event to me relative to other things, you know, that we looked at, like losing power or, you know, having a tornado here in the Midwest. Those types of things seemed very likely. I guess I just never thought that we'd be in the situation that we're in. And interestingly enough, I think it's really shortened everybody's adoption of technology as a result of finding ourselves in this situation.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that. I think in general, advisor adoption of technology seems to have been moving apace even before large swaths of the country went to some kind of self-imposed shutdown or lock-in. But yet we've heard this as well, that you know, maybe there's been like a leap of 5 years compressed into 5 months, or the advisors have really taken to it. I'm curious if there's like another shoe to drop in that that arc, though. I mean, you know, I think when everyone sort of went into lockdown mode, you know, I think for the most part, the advisors that we spoke to, I'm sure those advisors you spoke to, continuity plans went pretty smoothly. The advisors were able to keep up in contact with their clients. You know, they weren't seeing them in person as often, doing video conferencing, and that seemed to be going pretty smoothly. Most people seem to sort of carry the ball. But now we're kind of going into 9 months and maybe another threat of another winter, you know, a winter yet. And this thing could go on for a year or longer. how is there any kind of like long-term sustainable improvements or long-term damage to be done to this industry because of this thing just seems to be lasting a lot longer than people thought it was going to when we first started talking about it?
Well, anytime that there's a change in the world around us, David, I think that clearly we have to be willing to, set aside our old ways of thinking, our old ways of doing things, even things that had become, norms and things that were accepted. We have to be willing to step back and reevaluate the status quo, so to speak. And I think that there are opportunities that will forever change the way we do business as a result of this pandemic. For instance, the advisors that we serve no longer view themselves as geographically restricted. They are now able to confidently take on clients that live essentially anywhere inside of the United States. They can connect with them virtually. They can serve them using digital technologies and not worry about having to ask that prospect or their client to come into their office to sit down to have a meeting. And that's really a result of this pandemic. Technologies like Zoom that we would have taken, to your point earlier, from 5 years to 5 months, even to 5 days to, hey, we need to adopt this right now, are not only have advisory firms moved at lightning pace to adopt those technologies, but the clients have as well. And so when we step back and we look at things that have changed, one thing that we can realize is that it's going to create opportunities for us, different opportunities than maybe what we had, pre-pandemic, but clearly there are opportunities out there that we can capitalize on. And recognizing that, we also have a tremendous opportunity to reevaluate and hone our value propositions. Specifically, we're seeing advisors, sharpen their saw with regard to their efforts to prospect, plan, invest, and ultimately achieve investor success in very unique and different ways than they did pre-pandemic. Now, let me share one that's top of mind, at our business here. We're always looking at ways that we can recruit and retain top talent to serve our advisors. And over the 20 plus years that I've been running the Orion business, we've always tried to stay on the cutting edge of ways that we can recruit and retain top talent at our firm. And it used to be that allowing people to dress business casual was something that was, cutting edge. Now, most firms obviously have adopted that. It used to be that allowing our team members to take a sabbatical after, say, a given number of years of service was, again, another way that we could recruit and retain top talent. So we started to kind of push the envelope there with regard to creative ideas and creative thinking along those lines so that strategically we put ourselves in position to win. Well, I think that as we step back and we look at this work from home environment, we've realized that our team members want to retain the flexibility to work from home post-pandemic. Now, it may be a bit of a false positive today because we don't have a vaccine and it hasn't been widely distributed yet. But once we get past that, I think to be an employer of choice, we're going to need to allow our staff to continue to work from home, be very flexible with regard to location. And oh, by the way, I think that presents opportunities for our workspace. Our workspace could be more collaborative and team-oriented in nature. Our footprint, our corporate footprint here certainly will be less in the future than it is today, even though our teams are going to continue to grow as we continue to grow our business. And yet we will realize some significant savings as a result of that. I think it presents a lot of win-win opportunities across the board, but we've just got to step back and look at ways that we can operate our businesses very differently in the future relative to how we were doing business before the pandemic.
Sure. Will you get rid of some real estate there in Omaha? Are you going to be downsizing your offices? You have a fairly large building there, don't you?
We have two fairly large buildings, but we have opportunities with this space to make it more collaborative. Today we have a lot of cubes, a lot of desks that are available for people. We immediately shifted to a hotel type environment where people can reserve a desk. They can do so in a very socially distant and safe way. But yet, obviously, while we're in the midst of this and we're still continuing to see cases on the rise, people just generally speaking feel a lot better about working from home. So we're supporting that. But I do think, David, that, this notion that we had of corporate culture only existing because we worked inside of the same four walls is forever changed.
Yeah.
What that does to corporate space, that's going to be very different for us as we go forward relative to how we looked at that traditionally.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not so sure anyone really knows what it's going to look like, but yeah, it will change a lot. It strikes me that a lot of the things you guys do for advisors were almost well suited to this time frame, right? I'm thinking here about the recognition for the marketing platform, a digital marketing platform for advisors, or even the COVID-19 social media campaign that you guys launched, giving them tools to kind of help navigate this particular time. I don't think Marketer was necessarily for this particular time, but can you speak a little bit about to how, maybe digital prospecting and digital sources of business growth will become more important, now for advisors, and maybe how you see Marketer solving a need there?
Yeah, we really had a phenomenal opportunity to acquire an advisor the advisor financial planning business in the June and July of 2019 timeframe. And we bought Advisor not only for their financial planning capabilities, but we also bought Advisor for their ability to offer a personal capital-like client experience to the advisors that we serve. So our advisors now have a client experience that they can lead with as they're prospecting new opportunities. So they can invite prospects to fill out, say, a workflow around retirement accumulation or college savings or retirement income, those types of things. They can engage with that prospect and efficiently gather information so that they can have a really effective and productive first meeting. Well, we not only wanted to enable those workflows and campaigns, but we wanted to be able to surround those invitations with best-in-class marketing collateral that our advisors could leverage. And we did happen to launch that right at the same time that campaign content that we call Marketer. Those campaigns are directly tied to the planning workflows, and again, really drive some incredible first meeting discussions and some really productive outcomes that we're thrilled about. We did launch that right in the midst of the onset of the pandemic. It has been by far and away our most successful new product launch. And we're really excited about the momentum that those digital campaigns have with the advisory firms that we're doing business with. We simply wanted to help our advisors digitally connect with prospects, be able to provide something of value back to those prospects without our advisors spending an inordinate amount of time, and also allow our advisors to identify those top prospects in their funnels, so to speak, that they could be reaching out and working with. It's been a tremendous success. It was envisioned well before the onset of the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic provided an incredible amount of tailwind interest, so to speak, in that offering, and we're really excited about the momentum that our advisors are experiencing to organically grow their businesses during some times of significant headwinds.
Sure. So it's basically taking the what came with Advisor, ADVIZR, that financial planning platform that you acquired, and taking some of that functionality and putting it in some format that prospects can stumble across and start playing around with, and maybe start up that conversation with the advisor. Is that how it works?
That is spot on, David. That's exactly how it works. The firms we're doing business with have the ability to pick a topic of interest. That campaign collateral is already created for them. It is already digitally linked to the planning workflows, and then the information flows straight through to campaign dashboards, allowing them to decide the next steps or even automate what those next touch points may be with those prospects that they've connected with digitally.
Got it. And tell me a little bit about the COVID-19 social media campaign that you guys launched. What were you trying to do there? That was a quick rollout.
Well, again, what we wanted to do was when this pandemic came about in March, April timeframe, it was readily apparent to us that a lot of individuals in not only our community, but the communities where our advisors were doing business were hurt by the pandemic. Their anxiety levels of those that were and are impacted by this, awful virus are, creating anxiety levels that in essence are unprecedented. And, we're seeing, unfortunately, some of the social outcomes of that. People have lost their jobs. They are finding themselves in difficult family situations where they've lost loved ones. They're trying to figure out what their go forward looks like in a very different world than what we entered this pandemic in. And we thought that one thing we could do would be to offer out to the advisor community at large the ability to leverage our financial planning technology for free, regardless if they were doing business with Orion or not. We had dozens and dozens of firms reach out and take us up on that offer. We were able to see, an incredible amount of throughput in the financial planning technology that gave us some sense of satisfaction to see that we were able to leverage our technology in such a way that hopefully we were providing some measure or some sense of peace to those that were impacted by COVID.
Yeah, and there was a real pickup on it. What does that tell you about where the advisory industry is in terms of, that ever kind of shifting balance between portfolio management and investment advice to true financial planning? I mean, it strikes me that maybe there were a lot of advisory firms that were maybe a little unprepared for the kinds of questions their clients would be having, right?
David, I would also add that I was really excited to see some of the other tech providers, our competitors, quite honestly, also do something similar, so that regardless of what technology you may have had an affinity towards or familiarity with, we saw firms like InvestNet's Money Guide Pro, led by Tony Leal. He stepped up and did something very similar to what we did. And I think it was really a great thing, not only for, our advisors to be in position to help their communities, but it was also a way that our tech community could come together at large and really recognize what we could do to make a difference. As it relates back to the industry, right? I mean, I mentioned earlier about, taking this time to refine our value propositions. And we're seeing advisors shift from an investment-centric value proposition to a planning-centric value proposition. Historically, we've been in an industry that's very much focused on, let's identify your risk. Now we'll put you in the investments that are most appropriate based on that risk level. We have certainly seen that shift back towards helping the investor identify their goals, their objectives, their dreams, so to speak, and then coming up with an investment program that will help them maximize the amount of those goals that can be funded, help them realize what lifestyle changes they may need to make today to provide a better financial future for themselves and for their loved ones. It's a really awesome thing to see our industry making this shift. I do think as we look forward, though, David, that there's a bigger shift that is taking place, and we're seeing it with a few firms that are focused on behavioral finance. So when we look at the shifts in our industry, I think that we would recognize, or generally speaking, that we would agree that the investment problem has been solved. You know, there have been Nobel Prizes awarded for those that have contributed to solving the investment problem. You know, whether or not your investment beliefs and philosophies align with that of being a strategic investor or even that of being a tactical investor, we do recognize that if we can stick with a strategy and approach over a long period of time, that the rewards are typically there. And because of that, you know, you step back and you look at the data of, I mean, even at a high level, investment product returns versus investor returns. And that gap, that behavior gap that exists, is what I think as an industry, we've got to transition our efforts and energies and focus on helping to solve, you know, that investor problem as opposed to the investment problem. And that means a lot of really interesting things for our industry as we move forward.
Sure. And you know, it's one of these things where, and you guys have been on the bleeding edge of this for a long time, but you know, there still is a portion of the industry that does lead with investment management as their value. And more importantly, I think when I, you know, speak to, you know, civilians out there in the world who don't have anything to do with the industry but have a financial advisor, often their first comment to me is like, "Oh yeah, I have a financial advisor, and yeah, my portfolio is doing great," or "I have a financial advisor, and you know, he hasn't done anything for me." So you're talking about performance, you know, portfolio performance. And so there's still sort of a gap out there, I think, in the potential clients at large that still don't quite understand what we're talking about here.
Well, I think clearly advisors step in. They are focused on helping the investor minimize their cost. They help the investor diversify and allocate their portfolio appropriately. They're looking at ways to drive tax efficiencies and tax efficient outcomes for the investor. But the alignment of, you know, even the alignment of risk as it relates to diversifying out their allocation, I think is, those are all ways that advisors will continue to add value to the client. But I think that we've got to dig a little bit deeper, take our offerings, you know, a step further to really get at what will drive better behavioral outcomes. So for instance, you know, at a very simplistic level, you ask individuals in general to rate their driving skills. We typically will rate ourselves as above average drivers, but we all can't be above average drivers. Well, I think that there's a tendency to overestimate our ability to take on risk. There seems to be a difficult way in which we order our priorities. Some of us may have our aspirational goals ahead of our basic needs, so to speak. If you look at, you know, even going back to a very basic model of the hierarchy of needs, so to speak, advisors may find that investors, for instance, have a disproportionate allocation of their wealth tied up in a small business venture, as opposed to making sure that they have cash on hand to survive a crisis for, say, a 12-month time frame. So I think that there are things, if you look at the Aspirational Investor book, which is just a phenomenal book, that those types of behavioral opportunities exist in that advisor-client relationship. And I think that's the next frontier as an industry that we can focus on to really drive value back to the prospects and clients that as an industry we serve.
And where do you see technology? And I know you consider yourself a technology company, correct? Where do you see technology helping in that effort?
Yeah, we've got to do a better job providing our advisors with the tools to take that behavioral case all the way through the process, right? We can design and personalize an experience in a similar way to what Netflix does. When I log into Netflix, they tend to know things that are of interest to me, things that I'll naturally gravitate towards. And, we need to do a better job of that as an industry and as a technology business, and not only curating experiences that will resonate with the investor and help them segment and view their wealth to drive behavioral alpha, but we've also got to do a better job of providing that type of experience back to our advisors so that the approach that they're taking does innately resonate with their belief system as it relates back to planning and investing as well, so that they'll have the conviction that they need to help their investors stay the course. When you look at investment alpha and you look at tax alpha, you even look at alpha that our advisors add by the alignment of risk and evaluating cost. All of those things are great, but they pale in comparison to the behavioral alpha opportunity that exists of helping clients invest appropriately, understand their relationship with not only their investment portfolio, but the cash that they have set aside for savings, as well as potentially aspirational allocations towards helping them, start up a small business or leave a legacy, those types of things, so that the advisor can help drive a balance of behavioral value back to the investor. There's a lot we can do there. There's a lot of opportunity ahead. And quite honestly, as a tech provider, we've just got to do a better job of helping that next frontier, so to speak, of the change that needs to take place in our industry. I also think you'll see as we go forward a lot more psychology-oriented type degrees being best suited to act as a CFP, as opposed to financial or an accounting degree similar to the background that I have, being able to be best suited to help investors. And the reason that I say that, again, is that a lot of the investment analytics and the value drivers have been automated, commoditized. Not to say that they're not important. They are important. It's just that we've got to push ourselves beyond our traditional ways of thinking and really get to what can drive additional value to the investors that we're serving.
Right, and what the role of the advisor is there in that equation, right? When so much of that
very different. Very different.
Very different role. And I've even recently, right? Advisors seem to be saying, "Well, hold on for the long term. This isn't about looking at the next week or year or whatever. Hold on to the long term, and it'll all work out." And that's not quite enough, is it? I mean, particularly as markets get a little wobbly and tend to.
Advisors have got to provide and report out a framework that will help that message better resonate with the investor than what we've done historically. I think that means that we've got to aggregate additional assets, savings, bank accounts, cash set asides, those types of things that are included as that safety net to allow those lifestyle or those market level type returns to be a bit more volatile, knowing that safety net exists. Those types of things, and the way that we're reporting out to investors needs to change to just drive better behavioral alpha.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting stuff. We could talk about this for a long time, Eric. I know we could, and there's certainly more here that the judges recognized in our awards that we could talk about. But I know we only have a half an hour, and we're already there. So this has been great. I really appreciate talking to you. Appreciate every time we get a chance to talk. So thanks very much for joining us.
Great. Thank you for having me, David.
This is David Armstrong, editor of wealthmanagement.com, and you've been listening to the Wealthies podcast. This content has been made for information and educational purposes only. The views and opinions represent the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of wealthmanagement.com.